So the GTA 6 extended look just wrapped up like 30 minutes ago, and it's just information overload right now. And before I really started to dive into all of that, I want to just give my like immediate reaction and thoughts to what we just saw for roughly 26 minutes or so. And that is with GTA 6 looking, I mean, absolutely insane in this Netflix event. But I'll go over some of that here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. It was an interesting build up to it because of it being not on YouTube or anything. It'll be on YouTube in 6 hours, I guess, or so later on tonight. But when they started it up, it did kind of present less like them showing off a game and more so, yes, like them showing I don't know, a cinematic kind of experience sort of. I mean, that it immediately went right into the game with Jason and Lucia walking up to this building and looks for a big drug pickup that of course goes wrong completely and the cops just raid the place, and it is just an entire shootout as you're trying to escape. And one of the things, so I had a few things I was really curious about with this leap from GTA 5. Came out in 2013. Here we are now, almost 13 years later with Rockstar and the Grand Theft Auto franchise. The shooting was one of them, and it looked pretty good. It did the snap to targeting, and I mean, it was immediately jumping to headshots. So I don't know if that's an option. Maybe you can turn that off and just have free aim, because that could actually get kind of annoying if it is immediately jumping you to people that you don't necessarily want to aim at. But again, we'll see if that is maybe not. Either way, it definitely looked smoother and more responsive, I'll say, with the aiming than what we've dealt with for something like GTA 5, which again is based on a game that was on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. So the thing that to me though overall, as they're escaping, as they're going through this building that they're trying to get away from the cops, the environments, man, they looked very reactive. I mean, things were breaking apart, exploding, falling over. It looked like chaos. It definitely plays into the overall idea of them trying to make a reactive and kind of lived in world. So it did not look static the entire way through, which is particularly impressive because the lighting and the character models look super high quality. I mean, this we've talked about next generation. People will say, I'm waiting for that next gen aha moment, that big experience. And realistically, it's the further we've gotten away from last generation with the PS4 and the Xbox One. I think people tend to forget about the things that we went through during that time that we've kind of grown accustomed to now. That you basically have to go backwards to see that the games we're getting used to now are actually next gen, right? Especially when it comes to things like load times, that's a big one. We have a lot of advanced upscaling techniques now that can make games look pretty smooth, and we're very very used to 60 FPS titles, which is actually more on the frame rate that we saw here later on. But the point is, this is a game that when they started showing it, it was immediately apparent that it was a next gen title. We're like, oh, okay, yeah, this looks like a leap. It definitely looks like a jump over what we're used to with the PS4 and the Xbox One. Did it take 6 years into the generation for people to just go, yeah, it's next gen? I mean, yeah, but just the characters, the lighting, the number of NPCs that we see on screen at times, just how different each one of them look, how diverse. It's super impressive looking. It really, really is. There's like the small little attention to details that are going on as well. Some of them are just kind of like, hey, press R1 to smoke when Jason's like hanging out on the side of the building, right? Hanging out and talking, I guess, about some of the story, which a lot of the story was sort of out of context, but even down to things like where they're in the elevator and they're pressing the button and they keep pressing it, and you actually see the button on the side like legitimately to press in every time he hits it. Things like that where you go, yeah, okay, Rockstar is really really in to the fine details here, but that's kind of their thing, right? Is to things people wouldn't necessarily notice, they spend a fair amount of time on to make sure it is like that detailed. Okay. So they did a lot of quick cuts after Jason and Lucia were able to escape the police, and like they for example go through them robbing a bunch of different convenience stores. I mean, that's the big thing, is I think they're trying to establish their backstory of kind of the Bonnie and Clyde setup where yeah, they're knocking over a bunch of like small time convenience stores to get money, but also they're becoming somewhat known because they're getting hired for all these different odd jobs that might play into being like security detail or legitimately just doing like runs to try to pick stuff up as they show at the beginning of it. But when they eventually go and they pick up one person in their car, they kind of show some of their like their facial details and animations. That also looks like super high quality next gen level. So that's like the theme of this entire presentation was showing that yes, what you're looking at is like the most expensive game ever made, but it actually kind of looks like it. And that was always the concern, I think, for people is that they would see the game and go, oh, I don't, that doesn't, because the diminishing returns is always something, the law of diminishing returns, that's playing against the idea of making a graphically impressive game while sacrificing the frame rate. And so when you see this and it looks actually graphically impressive to where you're probably looking at the best looking game we've ever seen, you know, and the animations and like all the little details and features around the world and the reactive environments, it does look like a game that cost more than $1 billion, we'll say, to develop. That said, it looks like the frame rate's 30, and we've kind of discussed this at length. Most of us sort of figured that would be the case because Rockstar, as they've done in the past, will sacrifice frame rate to have a visually impressive, like cinematic narrative kind of experience. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best recent example, obviously, of that. But even going back to the older Grand Theft Auto games, GTA 5 was most of the time was in like the 20s for frame rate on the 360, especially the PS3. But people really, really like the game, have been playing GTA Online this entire way, and it got better. Yes, as more generations and more powerful hardware showed up, but it did technically get better over time. The chase scene that they showed, though, was to me particularly impressive because you could see just insane chaos happening with these cars and the pedestrians and flying through around corners and down alleyways. And then Jason's like shooting out the tires and they're flipping around. Typically, we see those and they're very scripted. I mean, I'm sure there's layers of scripting that's going on here, but it didn't necessarily feel like something that was as on rails as you would expect here. And the fact that everything was flowing together and still at that level of quality. They did show a 6-star system at the top as they were running from the police, and it seemed like Lucia decided to burn the car, which apparently that plays into the whole thing to where cops won't necessarily forget about your car if you just get it painted. So it seems like there's things you have to do to lower, I guess, your star rating, but they had 4 stars out of the 6. So I guess it's not just 5 anymore. You can go, I don't know, nuclear or something, and they start dropping the bombs from space on you. If you get to that level, they did show Jason playing basketball, which look, they had this planned out a long time ago, so it's not necessarily like, oh, CyberLeaks showed them playing basketball, so we're also going to put that in there. I think that's just kind of a funny coincidence, as they did show a lot of the slice of life stuff, that jet skiing, swimming, going underwater, scuba diving, which, yeah, the underwater stuff also looked kind of mind blowing. But boating, kayaks, dirt biking, there was base jumping. When they switched to nighttime, there's an entire street racing syndicate, it looks like, is happening there, which is pretty cool. The lighting in particular at night looked really, really, I mean, it's Vice City, so it's supposed to have that neon kind of color scheme, and it certainly did. And the club scene, it was a quick glimpse of it. It seemed like there were a lot of NPCs in that one area. And that's something else I was curious about, is just how many like computer controlled characters that they'll be able to have in a singular area like that, and if they'd really be able to stretch things out that way. I think you're going to go into one of these clubs, at least during a mission at some point, and it's just going to be an overwhelming number of NPCs all sort of doing their own thing. It won't be like a copy of either one of them all throughout. That's something that I think is going to be really, really cool to see. They did show a social media feed as well. So hey, apparently that's going to play into it. You'll be able to be an Uber driver if you want. So I'm curious if there's going to be a whole like section of the game where you're just trying to become an online influencer or something. Because of course they're going to parody and make fun of that, and they kind of already did, where they had one person who was in a trunk that Lucia stole the car and is like, I got, that like whole selfie thing. I got kidnapped in the trunk challenge, and the social media feed's going while you're trying to escape. It looks like the police, and it's just This is what I think a lot of us pictured when we thought of next generation, and it's finally a thing. So I mean, this is just super impressive. And we're still 3 months out from release. I'm curious if they talk anything about GTA Online, because right now it seems like dead set on this is GTA 6. This is the base PS5 version, which is also interesting because I the people they're going to sell to the most are going to have a base PS5. So it makes sense why they would show it on the system that should account for the majority of the copies. I am really curious about this PS5 Pro. I don't know if they're going to bump the frame rate at all for the PS5 Pro. Like, I kind of think they're just aiming for 30 across the board. And yeah, that includes the Series S. We'll see how that works out. But I think more or less it'll just make the game look better. So like the PS5 Pro with PSSR 2, maybe that just cleans up the image further. So like the thing that was, I think that I know people are talking about lighting and character models, the hair, just how I guess the physics around that, the movement. I mean, that was something that I genuinely looked at and was like, whoa, okay, that it sets everything kind of apart in the world for these different characters, but you could still see some kind of aliasing on the not individual strands, individual clumps of hair. So I almost wonder if that, for example, could be something that the PS5 Pro works to smooth out somewhat, and maybe that's an example they show off when they are ready to eventually talk about the PS5 Pro, which I figure will be like a PlayStation blog post down the road at some point. But there is so much information getting out there right now that I'm going to work to put a lot of this together for tomorrow in Newswave, and it's going to be interesting because people were kind of unsure sort of on the GTA 6 thing as leaks were getting out there. And of course, it's not the best light for the game because it was washed out. The HDR was off. And I mean, some of the animations even are kind of weird because it was an not super early build, but definitely not the build they're going to release when it drops in November. But after this, I mean, I feel like people were blown away by it, and excitement around a game that was already kind of viewed as the most likely to be like the best-selling game of all time, biggest release we've seen in entertainment history, I think just went to the next level, and people are, for the most part, going to be on board with this thing when it releases November 19th. But man, let me know what you guys thought about this one down below in the comments. Any little details you noticed from this extended look? What were your thoughts on the visuals, some of the gameplay, or other things they showed there? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.